Okay, record is on for the TST meeting. So we have one proposal. That's our one official bit of business today. But I'd also like to talk about progress on multiple fronts just to get a status report from different people. And I'll give you a heads up since I didn't send this around an email. We're in the process of trying to coordinate and get some activity going around Cord and Volta. And so Cord is relevant actually also to the collaborator proposal, so we'll definitely talk about that. I'm not sure who all is on that can speak to it, but I'd like just to get a quick summary of where we are with the release. I know that there was progress yesterday, but I just want to see if anyone has any updates on where things stand. I know there was also some problem this morning. And then a quick discussion, well, maybe it won't be so quick, about brigades. There's activity around 3 of them that we're trying to get defined and posted so people can come join them. And I just wanted to poll the audience again to see what else we might try to form a brigade around. There are a couple other proposals floating out there. I just want to see if we can make progress on those. Is there anything else?
I want to do the acknowledgments really quickly too.
All right, thank you for reminding me. So go ahead. Well, let's do the agenda, and then we'll start with acknowledgments. Any other agenda items?
Yeah, so Yen asked me to bring up the data model cleanup that we proposed to do as part of 3.0.1, that it could take between 1 and 2 sprints. And just to get an idea from the Cord and Cord people, and maybe the Cord people as well, how this fits with their integration effort, whether they want to integrate to Xproto now and then maybe make some changes once we have finished data model cleanup, or whether they want to integrate after we have finished data model cleanup.
Okay, good. So that's just a general discussion about timing of 301 and order of work. Okay, anything else?
Larry, does the QA brigade has any relevance here? The QA performance brigade that we have with Intel and everyone, Exia and Spirent and so on.
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk about brigades. One of them is the performance brigade.
Okay.
So we've got a collaborative proposal, updates on relaunching activity around Cord and Volta. Anyone has a word on release progress, brigades? Start with acknowledgments and the data model cleanup / 301 timing and planning. Sounds like a full agenda. Let's start with the acknowledgments.
I just reloaded the acknowledgement wiki as a reminder. That's been set up for a few weeks now. I'm not sending a reminder about it every week, but I could be a little bit more active on that. But even without an acknowledgement written down on the wiki, we should still open the floor for a minute or two to see if people want to give a shout out. Anyone? Is there anybody who you've worked with in the past week or two that you want to acknowledge or recognize?
Well, just a shout out, she's not here, but to Yen for all of the work she's been doing with organizing work for the next release. It's a much more organized process than we've had in the past, and I think that's valuable to us.
That's great, and I'm sure it's a lot of effort to pull all that together. Great. Well, if you could add that on the acknowledgement wiki, that would be great.
Yeah, I will add a note.
Thanks, Scott. That's a great one. And just for everyone's education, and people have been joining over the last several months, a mysterious decision was a fire drill. We are about to release Dangerous Edition, and then she joined at the very, very end of that. And so we got a little bit of planning going into Dangerous Edition that was more coordinated, and we've made a huge amount of progress. That whole process has gone increasingly better. But I think for Shared Delusion, we are finally hitting our stride in terms of planning and organizing and trying to make sure that what we're trying to accomplish fits in the amount of time we have. and she's been hugely instrumental in that.
Agreed.
Okay.
That's a great setup. Thank you.
So let's start with Mariner, who we have Jim and Alex on the line. They've submitted a proposal. And let me just speak to it for a second, and then I'll turn the floor over to them to say a few words. As everyone knows, we lost Srikanth on Cord, and so we've been working really hard to get people involved, and we're having really good progress, making really good progress there. But Mariner, as you can see from their proposal, is willing to step up in a pretty big way and commit engineering resources and bring up a pod so that they can do development directly. So this is great. I'm a huge fan of what they're proposing to do here. But let me turn it over to whoever it is that's going to speak about what you're planning to do.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Larry. Hi, everyone. It's Jim Foran from Mariner. I believe I may have met many of you at some of the recent shows, including the ONS Summit a few weeks ago. So it's great to be able to speak to you all here today. In the essence of time, we're going to skip through this fairly quickly. I'll introduce just myself and my colleague here, but I'll introduce myself first. I'm the VP of Strategic Development for Mariner. I've been with the company about 7 years now, and held numerous sales and business development roles with the company over the past 7 years. And with me today is Alex Petrovic. He's our Chief Technical Officer for the corporation, and he's also partnering with me on this new initiative. A quick word about Mariner for those that don't know us. I suspect many of you, or most of you, don't. We're a small independent software vendor based out of Eastern Canada. However, we do sell globally. Essentially, our purpose in life and our heritage has been around analytics and assurance solutions, primarily in the residential video space. So lots of experience with some of the largest video providers, pay TV providers globally, with more of a telco background as opposed to a cable co background. However, we are working very hard on the cable side as well. Our largest customer would be AT&T by probably a large measure, but we also have a number of Canadian operators as well as a number of other U.S., European, and Latin American operators who use our software commercially. We've kicked off this new initiative, which is really to move ourselves out of, let's say, sort of legacy-based services into next-generation networks. So, we've got sort of a working title for this new line of business that we'll be coming out with. Working title is Sonar 4, and it's essentially focused around edge analytics and assurance for next generation networks. So you can read that as software-defined networking crossed with network function virtualization. So we see it as a really big growth opportunity for us as a corporation, and Alex and I are heading up this nascent group and have been really, let's call it full-time on it for about 3 months now. Any questions before I get into the proposal? So our proposal really is focused on, as Larry said, 3 elements. I'd say the overall intent, though, the design intent of the initial proposal is really to build out a solid foundation of innovation for edge analytics. With Srikanth's recent departure, we recognize that there is somewhat of a vacuum there. I think Cord itself needs to get healthier. I think there's a lot of great work that certainly that's been done. Srikanth's done an amazing job, and we really feel as though we could pick up from where he left off. And after having the numerous sets of discussions with Srikanth, we feel pretty comfortable in being able to step up to some of these activities. So, without further ado, it's really built upon 3 elements. First element being a full-time open source committer role for Cord. And we'll get into details here in a moment. A second element is establishing a physical pod for Cord. And what we want to do is try to get all three flavors of Cord enabled within this pod, and we'll need some help there. We're certainly willing to fund it and do the work. I think we need a bit of help from a sourcing perspective, and I can give you a bit of an update there as well. And then lastly is becoming Cord ambassadors. Because of the reach that we have and the numerous offices that we have globally that are close to some of these large operators, we think it provides a great leverage point for the community that we're willing to step up to, that we could provide that local touch and become, do the evangelization and ambassadorship that Cord really needs. So, certainly a Cord would hopefully be our specialization, but more generally, we'd like to be, vocal supporters and ambassadors for the cause. So those are the three elements at a very high level. Before we go into any detail, are there any questions?
Sounds great.
Thank Jim, one quick question. Could you elaborate on your video analytics aspects and exactly, is it specifically for residential users or are you thinking mobility as well?
Well, so historically, so for instance, at AT&T, let's speak, is that Tom Toffee?
Yes.
So, hi, Tom. So, historically, we've been involved with AT&T since 2012 on the Uverse platform. However, starting last year, we've been full tilt in migrating all of that capability over to the DirecTV Now multi-screen offering. So our experience has really been across both residential and mobile video play out for pay TV operators. That's probably our sweetest spot. And then in addition to that, we also monitor all residential gateways across the AT&T Uverse footprint, or actually more than just the Uverse footprint. I guess the entire AT&T high-speed internet footprint, which is, I don't know, Alex, you might know, I mean, it's many millions of residential gateways. And then, of course, we have other customers like Bell Canada with their 5TV product that we also monitor, both set-top box and residential gateways, TELUS, Frontier, number of other operators in North America. We can get into the details with you perhaps offline, Tom, if that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, we do need to wrap this up pretty quickly. So let's go back to the proposal, if you will.
So let's go back to element one. So this is the open source committer role, which I think is really the centerpiece of what we want to do here. We're willing to commit a full-time resource to this. We've already had a lot of dialogue with Srikanth around how big a lift this is. We certainly know that there'll be an up ramp or an onboarding period that will happen. But I'll get my colleague Alex now to just speak at a very high level. Alex, you can hit just tops and waves for what you think the, let's say, the role and accountabilities will be for that resource.
Yes, thank you, Jim. So basically, what we're proposing is, standard, software developer type role that will help bring that, Cord agenda forward. That means, writing and updating any Cord software based on the requirements that come from the steering committee, updating and writing any of the build scripts to enable the automated builds, doing the unit tests, potentially doing some functional tests and stress level tests on the Cord side of the things, but also, trying to take that additional role of ensuring that the Cord features are in line with some additional open source activities that we see happening in this industry. Is that alignment with the on-app analytics DCE and proposing new features to do that, proper alignment to the TSC to approve them, or is it researching other initiatives that are happening in the industry, both open source and proprietary, basically just to bring the Cord side of the business up to the task and up to the proper level of analytics. So that's in an essence, what we're proposing. What this one full-time resource to do. As per number of physical heads, this would either be one person on a rotational basis that we would fit in for one person for several months and then replace with a different person on the ongoing basis, or it could be a combination of two resources, etc. But what we're trying to commit here is one resource to the ACORD project full time.
Alex, that's great. And in hearing you talk through the issues, it occurs to me that the first objective is just to get things running again and to get it out in 301 within the next few weeks. But you talked about testing and stress testing, performance testing, and that would be a great next angle. It just occurs to me as a way of coming up to speed, because there's a lot of room for work there.
Yes, Larry, we agree. And basically, historically, our company, we've been known to be a tinkerer. So basically, yes, the focus of the company is on the statistical data analysis, but to understand some of the problems, you need to go that step further to understand the engineering type problems. So what are the signatures, what are the patterns in the data, you can do that. And the only way how you can do that is if you have a solid lab where you can test some of the functions.
Exactly. To get to that point, you've got to take the step that will help you and then help everyone else. So this is all great, and you also were, I know the second point was bringing up a pod. That's that'll take effort and it will take some help, but that's great. Is there something else to say about the ambassadorship?
And this is David.
No.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I'm really excited to hear that you're interested in being the active ambassadors. And I know you've talked to William some, so you may not have any additional questions, but this is David, and I'm just happy to support you getting ramped up and plugged into that, if that's helpful.
Great. Thank you, David. I'll reach out to you. Yeah, and on just lastly on the Cord pod, what's clear to us is getting, let's call it the core Cord infrastructure established. There's a clear bill of materials for that. I think we have a very clear line of sight on how to do that. I think once we get into the access devices, though, it becomes hazier. So Larry, I think where we could use help from the overall team is just some coaching, guidance, and maybe brokering of discussions with the right folks that will help us be able to source some of those devices. I have spoken to Cavium, and we've spoken to them in quite a bit in two different sources here. I met with John Schimpf last week, and he's got some action items that he's following up on to try to sort of get us, let's say, enabled. But we really feel it's an important piece of this that we be as self-sufficient as possible, and we're willing to take the time and effort and cost to go ahead and source and engineer those integrations. I think where we could use help from your team is actually understanding the reference model that you folks have set up in your labs, so that we can replicate that in some fashion.
Yep, absolutely.
And lastly, I think as we hit at the very top of this thing, this is all initially we want to get. It's going to take us a few months, we think, to kind of get up to speed, get this thing smooth, get ACORD locked down, and get source control understood and deployments understood really well. We want this to be a platform for innovation. So we think initially, because of our heritage related to video in both residential and mobile delivery forms, there'd be a great set of use cases around that, and they tend to energize a lot of operators given its very competitive space right now. Certainly we'd love to be able to explore some of that in the coming weeks and months as we establish this overall foundational capability.
That's great. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question in particular? Any of the TST members want to chime in? So very strong. I really appreciate your stepping up and committing resources the way you're describing. I'm all in favor of this. The other, happy to continue the discussion, but I want to see if the other board TST members are on board.
Yeah, I think this sounds great.
Yeah, same here. I've read the slides. I've heard you talk. This is yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for.
This is sort of agreement.
Okay, great. That's all right. So we're official now, and now we just got to do the work. I'm going to do a slight transition, which is still. I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
I was just going to say real quick, I'll follow up offline about getting this on the Cord site and connecting them with our PR team.
That's great. Thanks, David. So I'm going to transition slightly because it's still very relevant, which is to what we're doing about bootstrapping Cord. And so there's now a weekly call. It's on the calendar. It's 9:30 Pacific time Monday mornings. There is now the wiki page is starting to grow some content. The Cord page, including a list of high-level objectives and that's now branched out into a few corresponding epics in Jira. There's for now at least, we're going to run with a separate Cord project on Jira, and we're still in the process of bringing. Sorry, we're still trying to bring process to that, and the idea I think will be once we get a stable version of the current monitoring service running, that I believe the plan is to shift into more regular sprints and sprint planning and so on. Bora has been helping, especially getting this up and running, and getting Cord up and running again. Bora, do you have any other high level comments on how things are going with just Cord as a project?
Yeah, thanks, Larry. Actually, yeah, what you have described was what we are at the point right now. So I don't have much to add, but I think just a little addition that I'm optimistic that we will have Cord up and running soon. I think it's just a couple of weeks away, and hopefully we will be able to meet the deadlines of Dangerous Edition 3.1. That's I just wanted to mention.
Good. Yeah, thanks. That is the thing that we're shooting for now, and yeah, and then getting Mariner's help in here is going to be a great boon.
And that sounds great. And I also feel excited to hear about more use cases, maybe especially for the September MWC at San Francisco. I feel like Mariner will have a significant contribution to the demoable use cases over there.
Yeah, that's very true. Thanks. All right, so we're not going to go into it in depth. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that there is now some activity around planning in Jira and the wiki and so on. So start following that, and there's the Slack channel and all of that. So be aware of it. Let's spend another couple of minutes on the same thing with Volta. Is there anything to say about how that's coming along? And maybe I'm turning to Saurabh on that.
Well, with Volta, we're making some targeted decisions about how to run Volta as an open source project with releases and a TST that decides on architectural direction, and have Donna from Radisys be sort of a release manager or scrum master, if you wish, that will bring some goals towards the next release, or maybe the first release of Volta, and then break that down into stories and sprints, and have those tasks be assigned to the vendors that are interested in contributing to Volta. And when I say Volta, I mean the entire Volta solution, not just about Volta, but also the ONOS apps and how it integrates into our Cord and how it can be used independent of our Cord. So these are decisions that have taken place over the last week or so. And Donna has called the first sort of meeting of the TST for Volta to decide on the path that Volta will take towards its next release, or maybe its first release. So Donna has sent out an email for that first meeting to be held, I think, Wednesday. That's tomorrow, I think, in the afternoon. Has anyone received that meeting mail on any of the Cord mailing lists? Not yet? Okay, so I will make sure that that goes out on the mailing list today. Donna, if you're on the call, can you please have that invite be sent out? Okay, so maybe she's not on the call. I will make sure that that goes out this afternoon. So yeah, so that's a quick recap of.
Thanks. Saurav. Well, it would be good to get that meetings on the Cord public calendar as well. But
yeah, that's right. We'll get it on the calendar as well.
Thanks. All right, this is great. So both of these projects have, languished a little bit, but I think we're making a good start in getting them up and running again. Is anyone that's in the midst of it have any updates on the release? I know the 3.0 rebase happened yesterday, but I also know that there's some problem that's arisen. Andy?
Yeah, so we're fighting a couple of bugs right now. A bug with how a Python package is getting installed just popped up, and there's another bug that affects building a hardware pod, but not Cord in a box. So I think we've got kind of a handle on these bugs, and we're hoping by the end of the day to have them stamped out. And then I think our plan is to cut RC1 tomorrow.
Great. That's what I wanted to hear. Okay, so why don't we transition then to possible future upgrades of that release. And again, I know that there's a lot of uncertainty here. But Scott asked a specific question about model cleanup versus 301. So maybe we can start with Scott saying how that cleanup is going to affect, let's just say, for example, eCord.
So what we've got, right now we've finished Xproto, but Xproto development requires you to manage both an Xproto file that's declarative as well as a set of Python files in a place that we call the attic. So the stuff that's in the attic is stuff that we intend to get rid of. Hopefully we intend to get rid of a lot of it during the first 2 sprints of the next release. So what it comes down to is whether the other Cord projects, whether they want to develop with Xproto as it stands now, which includes having to manage this attic, or whether they want to wait for us until we finish the cleanup and develop when there will be either no attic or a attic of reduced size to deal with. Did that sound clear enough, Larry?
Well, clear enough to me, but let me try to help everyone else. Maybe get a little bit more information from eCord. I know Mark's on, but I'm not sure who else is. So I know that Sapan did a fair amount of work helping eCord transition. So maybe, and that would be with attic. So that would be releasable. Then it's just a matter of do we go through the cleanup effort, right? So maybe my first question is what is the current state?
Just to specify the cleanup effort, I expect it's mostly going to be deleting stuff, with maybe modifying some declarative parts more than it's going to be generating lots of new stuff. So if that helps with the decision at all on how much effort we expect this to be.
So all right. So let me pop up a level. This is not something that we're going to resolve because it involves looking at and understanding code. So I think the main point here is making eCord and now ACORD aware of this issue. And I think it ultimately comes down to, do we want to release a 301? I'm going to presume it's a 301 and not a 3.1 with addicts or without. And in some sense, that seems like an independent question from getting eCord and or ACORD up and running as of 3.0.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, Larry. It's mostly just deciding where we want this attic cleanup effort to fit in with what everyone else is doing. Okay,
so let's assume this, and Mark, if this, and Bora, if this doesn't make any sense, we can talk offline. But let's move towards the monitoring service and the eCord services with the attic, which just means there's still a couple legacy Python files somewhere, and that is a stable point which we already are essentially at or very close to, given my understanding. So there's no sense not doing that. And then the cleanup work that is done as part of the first 1 or 2 sprints of shared delusion will include cleanup not just of our cord, but of anyone else that's gotten to an equal state, which sounds like would probably be eCord and ACORD as well.
That sounds fair, Larry.
Okay.
I don't think it. I mean, it's more an aesthetic effort than anything else, right? It doesn't buy us any new features, so if we can release something that is stable, for me, that's good enough.
Yeah, and it's also essentially the state that Soppen has been in the business of helping people get to. So we just as well take advantage of that to reach that stable point and then clean up. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds fair to me too, Larry.
Okay. All right, good. And then it'll simply be a question of, is what we have today what we want to call 301, or would we want to wait until we do a little more cleanup, and how much cleanup do we do? All right. Brigades. So we would like to get a 2, 3, 4 brigades up and running as soon as possible. We talked about a number of candidates last week. I just want to report a little progress and then maybe hear if there's other progress I don't know about. And so we are most certainly planning a performance brigade. I'm just applying that label to it. It involves bringing in some optimizations that Intel already has. That doesn't mean we have to limit ourselves to those optimizations, but these are OVS and DBDK optimizations, so clearly we should do that. But I think the more challenging, longer, bigger picture here is that we want to then demonstrate, do benchmarks on various configurations of Cord. Candidate number 1 is MCord, and again, this is a very direct priority for Intel, and that's where they would, as a participant in this brigade, that's where they would likely be spending their time. But this is also an opportunity to do exactly the same thing for our Cord, and so we are going to need to recruit more people. I know that there are some of you that are speaking up about being interested in doing that, and so what I'm trying to do is, there's a tiny bit of formality to declaring a brigade. It involves some objectives and goals, a technical lead, a mentor, which is basically someone that is well versed in the inner workings of the system, helping out to make sure everyone is moving forward in a way that can be brought back into the core, and then a product owner, essentially a champion that wants to see the work done. So progress is happening on that, and we'll probably likely bring up a wiki page with some of those details, and I'll start pointing people at those, and then we'll start recruiting to them. But it's sort of a two-stage process, by the way, which is we want to get the project of the brigade defined, and then we want to go out and recruit. If you already know that you want to participate, then certainly get involved in that first stage. But we don't need to wait to have the entire team pull together before we write down what it is we want to do. And Tom, to your question, this is where the folks you've been talking to, I think there will be great opportunity there. As
Sure,
benchmarks and testing against the optimizations.
Yes.
So second one, which came up last time, and then we kind of shot it down, but I'd like to resurrect it because I think we have interest, which is just upgrading OpenStack. And that sounds like a modest task. That sounds like a modest task, but I think it will be a little bit more challenging because we will at that point be able to support multiple OpenStack versions, and I think that's going to take generalization work on the build process, and possibly some generalization work on XOS/data model. And so I don't want to treat that as a trivial thing to do. If it were, we would have done it by now. The ability to configure multiple versions will be a feature that we need to add. And so again, making progress on lining up some of the key people. If that's something you want to participate in, let me know and I'll get you involved earlier in that discussion. The third one is the Kubernetes upgrade. And David, I haven't had a chance to respond to your email, but maybe I'll give you a chance to talk about, oops, David was there. I don't see him anymore. All right, so third one's Kubernetes, and there we really are still looking for some technical lead type people that are really willing to spend, a significant amount of time, not all full time, but a significant amount of time pushing it forward, making sure that whatever other team members we have are all working towards the same goal. Are there other brigades people would, after having thought about it for a week, like to move forward on?
Larry, I have something to add here. So I haven't communicated about this publicly yet, simply because it's still early days. But so we recently started engaging with China Mobile in the context of eCord. They have a few use cases they want to investigate, or at least play with. One of them is what they call SPTN. Stands for Software Defined Packet Transport Network. It is basically, at its core, it's an OpenFlow table type specification for MPLS TP, and it will be of, I guess, tremendous value for the eCord layer 2 VPN type of connectivities over the transport. So there's this desire at China Mobile, and at the same time, for me personally, or for the eCord team, not a lot of expertise about this. So the idea was raised to start a brigade around this. Again, it's too early to say how it will go, who it will include. But if you're interested in this, please speak up and reach out to me. I'd love to talk. Make sense? Or any questions?
That would be great. The brigades that I've talked about are all platform focused, but it's my opinion that the ripest place to do brigades will be with the different flavors, because those are the most directly connected to POCs and demos.
Yeah, in a way, they are more directly connected to a service provider use case, but I don't want to minimize the value of upgrading OpenStack and all that. That is also very, very important work. So I guess it's just a vehicle to get something done, the brigade. So let's look at it like from that perspective.
Yep, absolutely. So actually, let's talk about this for just a second. And with David, hopefully you're still there. About brigades. So there's a general model that says brigades have a service provider sponsor, someone that wants this feature because, yeah, and they're going to demonstrate it in a POC or something. But it strikes me that, as the TST could effectively be the quote unquote product owner. There's just some foundational things that we know we need. It supports so many different use cases that it's hard to and maybe not even appropriate to single one out. Certainly we can make brigades whatever we want to, but it strikes me that having the TST, or if you want to put my name by it, that would be fine as product owner, kind of makes sense. Did I just break the brigade model?
No, I would agree with that. I mean, and this goes to some learnings we've had from ONOS. I mean, I think there are some best practices we can recommend to people, but we don't want to go so far as to say they're rigid requirements. I mean, like to your point, there may be things that need to get done, and the TST feels strongly, and let's just go ahead and rally people around that. I don't think we have to say, unless there's a product owner, we're not going to do it.
All right, so it's a process. I told you of a couple brigades that I'm trying to nudge forward, and I'll post email about it, but also what this translates into is we'll start bringing up wiki pages, and Mark, I think I'd encourage you to do the same thing. There's now a brigade page. Maybe it's not in the right place. I have to go look. Off of which we'll hang the brigade proposals, and so I'll start bringing a couple of those up, and then whoever else wants to put a proposal forward, it's perfectly fine. We don't have to. If you can put a proposal up and recruit people, I don't think there's any other requirement than that. Shoot, I was going to add one more thing. Oh, there is one other suggestion for a brigade, and it actually is related to what we heard from Mariner earlier on, which is help bringing up a full pod, especially the access side. Do we have Luca on by any chance?
No, he's not in the room.
Okay. Well, then I can volunteer him. It would just be good to have people bringing up pods and documenting that process, perhaps with a little help the first time, but using that as a way to bootstrap pod configuration and deployment. And Luke has been doing this and would certainly be the guy at Owen Lab that could help out. But for example, if Mariner, when Mariner brings up a pod internally, having them document that, write down their experience, and just augmenting the documentation and information that's available would be a really good thing. Now, I don't quite know how to translate that into a brigade, but for everyone that brings up a pod, that would be a really great bit of outcome coming back.
Yeah, I think this sounds great, Larry. I volunteer to contribute to that.
So how do we?
Bora speaking.
Great, thanks, Bora. How do we turn that into an actionable item? I'm still a little bit at a loss as to how to do that. Is it a brigade or?
Actually, it's a good idea. Like brigade would be a good idea to bring maybe different team members from different areas together and once a week, so they can see what the gaps are.
It sounds like a brigade / support group, but maybe that's good. Maybe we can make that work. So we'll need to recruit someone to kind of take ownership of it, and maybe I don't know. I don't want to put Luca on the spot here, but maybe he can not take ownership, but help, because he has done this himself and gone through the process, and I know he has written down a lot of notes on that. But I think we're going to need maybe more volunteers there. So I'll try to start crafting that in brigade form, so we have a place to collect information and see where we can take it.
Yeah, and I mean, within this context, I really would like to have targeted documentation. I mean, starting from the roles. For instance, if you want to bring a pod up, come this way. If you want to contribute to development, come this way. And if you just want to use Acord or use eCord or mCord, this is the guide here. But if you want to contribute, this is the guide here. And that kind of role-based or use case-based documentation, I believe, will help.
So maybe what we need is the documentation brigade. And bringing up a pod is just one example.
Yeah.
All right. Let me think about that. I think we could maybe generate some activity around that general problem, because clearly there's a lot to do. I mean, we're transitioning. Never mind. Someone's going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're thinking along the lines of a documentation brigade, there is an active ONOS teaching brigade that's creating documentation, and their scope, it was starting with ONOS, but is planning to include Cord, so we could loop them in and bring them Cord expertise and maybe not have to duplicate efforts. And there's that group is pretty active. There's 10+ people. They're having a meetup and documentation hackathon in May in Paris. So maybe combining efforts and strengthening that would make sense.
All right, let's look into that. That sounds like a good idea. So how many people are involved in that? Must be a pretty
teaching brigade? There's a bunch of people who've signed up. Over 20 have signed up, but the core of active groups is around 10.
Okay.
I'll drop a link in Slack so you can take a look.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Is there anything else? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Productive meeting. Thanks, Mariner, for your proposal. And I guess we'll adjourn for now. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.